Here. And, okay. Hey guys, so this is the revival of an interview series that I ran for a number of years. It used to be underneath the Mental Meatheads moniker, but today, or starting today, I want to start revisiting strength coaches, lifestyle coaches, leaders, interesting people, um, anybody that I feel like I want to talk to or I think you guys might find interesting. Record these conversations and put them out onto our little private Facebook group as exclusive content just for you, just as a way to increase the value that I add to our community and keep things interesting. So today I've got on the line Isaac Wilkins, and Isaac falls under the all of the above category. He's a strength coach, he's a leadership coach, and he is an all-around interesting person. So I'm really thrilled to have him with us today. And Isaac, say hey.
Hey man, I appreciate that very kind intro. I don't know if it all applies, but I'll take it. So
nah, you're modest, dude. You're
right.
You're definitely one of the ones that I always look to because you're a thinker in this industry that is not always populated with thinkers, and everything that I've ever seen you do has always I've always found interesting. So so I'm really happy to have you on here. You mentioned before we started the recording that things were starting to warm up for you in May, up in Maine. Sorry, in this month of May. Which is a bizarre concept for me because it's already been warm here for almost 2 months now. So not quite what I would call hot yet, but what's your weather like? What do you call them warm? I see you got a hoodie on. So
yeah, I got the hoodie on. So today's pretty decent. Today's gonna end up hitting like high 50s. So
dude, that's winter for us,
right?
So basically, so
it's been like high 50s, low 60s for a week or two, but it was down to. We got snow beginning of last week, so that made me a little grumpy, but that type of thing. So
right. So when the highs hit into the 50s during the winter, that's my indicator that I let the fire go out in the stove.
Yeah.
So, so generally we hit that 30s, 40s range, and I'm like, all right, gonna build a fire and warm up, and I'll be like, damn, I gotta let it out. So that's funny.
Yeah, we're still getting down to. We probably won't have. We might have one more freeze before we're all said and done. Like traditionally in Maine, you don't put your garden in until Memorial Day.
Wow.
You don't put plants in the ground until Memorial Day traditionally.
Okay.
And this year it's been a little warmer earlier, so I've been kind of tempted a few times.
Yeah.
And just every time I really think about it, we'll dip down to 25 degrees at night for a couple of nights or something like that, just enough to remind me to not do that.
Yeah, we start gunning around here at the end of February.
Yeah.
Basically, there's. Do you know what a forsythia is?
Yep.
Okay, so the general, I don't know, folklore guide was that you didn't plant until after the forsythia had bloomed, which is actually a little early for us. Generally, I found that we get one more frost after the forsythia's bloomed, but like I'm starting to think about it. So that's cool. So you're planting a garden this year?
Yeah, I'll do a little bit. I grew up in farm country. I grew up, my family we raised animals. We had a garden, a big garden, stuff like that. So, which I guess we could even dig down that rabbit hole. So I've always felt like I don't feel, for lack of a term, I don't feel complete if I don't have at least some like hand-to-hand touch with my food.
Nice.
So like even when I was living in apartments and stuff like that, you know what I mean, in college, I would still like have like a little window box where I had some herbs. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah. Yeah.
not even nothing like you wouldn't even call it a garden by any means, and it would be more symbolic than anything else, but enough so where I could like pick a couple basil leaves to throw on a pizza. So just like something so where
Yeah.
I could
Still.
feel like I actually was connected to my food a little bit. So
Nice.
now I'm so busy that I don't do like a real honest to goodness garden like what anybody that is a gardener would call that. But I put some plants out, and I take a little care of them, and just sort of like not not enough so where I would consider it even like a remotely legitimate percentage of any sort of calories I consume. But just enough to like so I can point to it and say, oh, I can make a salad or stuff like that I grew, that type of thing.
Still keeping that
So
connection. I appreciate
yeah,
that. I'm in a
yeah,
similar boat. I consider myself a master composter.
yep.
And that, in fact, I've got more compost than I can actually or have put to use yet.
Likewise. Yep.
But the garden is always kind of, particularly this year. Yeah, I apologize for the background noise there. My wife, both my
All good.
wife and I have been working towards bringing our work home.
Mm.
So she's currently running a small little daycare
Excellent.
out of the house. So those joyful voices that you hear in the
Indeed.
background are the little rugrats in the other room.
All good.
But my youngest daughter um, graduated high school January 2020.
Mm.
So she got out of school, basically right before everything went to shit. And so
Welcome to life.
yeah, right. It's a wonderful introduction. And so, she basically got her freedom, and then it was immediately taken away from her. And so about midsummer or so, we agreed to help her get we called her a quarantine puppy. So we went to the pound and we let her pick out a puppy, and so she got this dog. And then she just moved out, and I still have the dog. So Benson is we call him a boggle. He's a boxer beagle mix.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And yeah, not a combination that I would have voluntarily chosen or created. But there he is. He exists. And so he's hampered garden significantly this year because we're having to have conversations about where you dig and actually digging, period. And so I've lost a couple of things that I've put in the ground already. So
I can see that.
Once those that relationship is firmly established, I think I'll be better off. But it's delaying a lot of stuff this year. So I think that's really cool, though, because we have joked in the past that that Maine is the Alabama of the South, or that Alabama is the Maine of the South. Or Maine is the Alabama of the North. I think I've botched that. So that's really cool, and I think that's part of the reason that you and I have kind of a connection there is that there are some real similarities in terms of having a slightly more rural connection, or at least being tied in with that. And I'm curious as to how do you think that informs your work? Like, how does that play into both your strength training, and I also want to talk about this new leadership thing that you've got going on.
Yeah, it could go a lot of ways with it, but I think that one of the things that I've always, even when I was like deep in the strength coaching world, which I still am. So I do every day. Like I'm in my beautiful boiler room office here at the gym. But one of the things I always stressed with people, and I don't know if I even really verbalized it with myself so much, but I always stressed was this idea of what you do in the gym translates to preparedness outside of the gym. And early on in my training career, training clients, I quickly found that, I would train by various methods, and I've always been attracted to more of the unconventional kind of strongman type stuff like that. Both, I think it does lend itself from my farm history, but also I'm good at it, so I liked it. So then I learned more about it, and then I liked it. You know what I mean? It's this type of cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But I always took great pride in that my clients would be whatever, a 50-year-old woman or so, like not necessarily a competitive athlete, and they would always come to me with some sort of like real world example of like, oh, the training really paid off. I had to move this door that my husband bought. I had to, XYZ. And it's very rare that they would get excited about hitting a PR on a lift, or it's very rare they would get excited about losing some inches on their waist, like a measurement.
Right.
And I noticed that early in my career that they were like, if I could point out, hey, oh, we're down 2 inches on your waist, they'd be like, oh, that's awesome. You know what I mean? They'd be happy about it, but they never had that fervor that they did when they would come in almost jumping up and down to tell me about that they felt awesome going hiking with their kids, or they went on a ski trip and they were able to actually ski twice as many runs as last year and they weren't sore the next day. And it was always some sort of like real world thing for the adults. Obviously the kids are the student athletes are the student athletes. They have very clear metrics of like, oh, did I score 3 goals or did I score 1 goal? You know what I mean? But like the adults, it always translated to something outside of the gym. And like I said, at first, I don't know as though I necessarily really keyed in on it. It just sort of was like one of the things that seemed to happen. But over time, I learned that those things are more valuable to people, more valuable to the adults. So I turned around and I made that into more of a cornerstone of our program and of my training system and stuff like that. And of course, that means that the answer for what that is different for everybody, which is why I individualize our programming. But I tell people all the time that I want you to feel good doing whatever it is that you decide you want to do. So the gym, for most of the adults, unless they are a competitive lifter, the gym is an adjunct to that, not the other way around. And it kind of keeps me grounded. It keeps me, every once in a while I got to check myself, a lot I got to check myself, but I find that that's where you see a lot of coaches, a lot of trainers, a lot of strength coaches miss the boat and not even to throw rocks, but their perception's off because they end up being lifters. Like I used to compete in powerlifting. I probably have a few meets left in me. Who knows? My priority is not there right now, but or strongman or something like that, or when I was playing football or whatever, and like you've done powerlifting, you've done jiu-jitsu, you've done these things. And we love this stuff and that's what made us want to be trainers at it. We're good at it. We like it. We feel good. We derive pleasure from it. We love digging into the details and running programs and checking the data. And we love all that shit. And our clients don't. That's why they're clients.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and not to say that they don't eventually learn to love that type of stuff. They learn to love exercise. They do. But the reason they're almost across the board, the reason they're hiring me or they're hiring you or whatever is because they want to get better at something in their life, not inherently because they want to bench press XYZ. Again, there are exceptions. But so as a result, when I realized that, I'm like, oh, okay. So this person, I had a 8-week program set up for them, and it was hinging on these types of lifts, doing this and this, and this was the progression. And they just called me and said they're not going to come in this Thursday because they had a chance to go do a 6-hour hike with their friends. And now in my head, I start to get pissed because I know that that's going to screw up Friday on their program. But then I can check myself and say, wait a minute, they hired me so they could do things like go hiking for 6 hours with their friends.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do. That's their priority.
Yeah.
They're not lifters. If they were one of my competitive lifters and in 2 more weeks we have a powerlifting meet, then I may say, hey, look, not the way to go.
Yeah.
But so that perception, that change is affected my whole career. Like I've done things a little differently than most people my whole career, because I've always kept that in mind. And you see it in the strength conditioning world with collegiate athletes. I used to see it a lot with guys who, they become a strength coach because they finished their college football career or their whatever career, and they weren't good enough to go to the pros. Like, it's the way it is. So, but they were weight room guys. So they got excited about that. So they became weight room guys, and then they got into powerlifting, they got into strongman or something like that. I'm stereotyping, but it's I'm stereotyping for a reason.
Yeah, it's a trend. I get it.
And so they end up, as a result, because they're powerlifters, everything becomes about the numbers in the weight room. So they care that they took this kid from a 405 squat to a 445 squat, and they make it a big deal and how awesome it is, and it is. But if they had to put 30 pounds of weight on him to do it, he's now a shittier football player. And so they get their metrics confused. They get more focused on kids hitting numbers because that's the only lens that they're going to look through, versus the ultimate goal is kid playing better football or playing soccer or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's keeping that in mind from the get-go has helped me a lot in my career, and it's helped me kind of connect to a lot of different clients because I'm more focused on what their vision is and building a program that's going to actually get there versus what my vision is for what a good program is or what that type of thing. So
yeah, I think that is that's such a sign of maturity in the business. When you stop defining your clients based on your metrics and start trying to understand, wait a minute, like, why are they even here? Right. And what are those goals? And then trying to help them move towards what their goals are. Even if they don't even know what they are, right? Because frequently we'll have clients who come in that they have just a real nebulous sense about what it is that they even want. They'll walk in and they're like, this right here, I don't want to be this anymore, right? And okay, change me, but like, what does that mean? Where do you want to go? Yeah, and getting to know your clients and understanding what's important to them is super important. So that brings me to this idea that I've been thinking about lately, and I think you fall into this as well, is that as far as our industry is concerned, we're dinosaurs, dude. We're old.
Yeah. Trust me. Every day when I wake up, I realize that.
Right? We're like
had the birthday last week. I'm firmly aware of how old I am.
How old are you now?
41.
41. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, dude, I turned 50 this year. Yeah. So not only, have we been, like, I started late, so I'm 15, 16 years into the business, which is still like a really long time to be in the business. Right.
Yeah. This is year 20 for me.
Yeah. So
it's almost exactly, because I got my certification at the end of a school semester. So this is the last semester at school. So it's probably actually almost exactly 20 years.
Yeah.
I started training clients like a few weeks after that.
Which is a long time in this business. And so, and that comes with, like, I hesitate to use the term mastery because I don't think that, I don't think that I personally will ever fully master this craft. But I do think that I do have a level of expertise and a level of experience that puts me further down the line from the 22-year-old who's been training just a couple of years and just doesn't have that time in the game. The interesting thing about this business, though, is that, in my experience, your clientele is not very educated, right? And so, like, when they go in to choose a trainer or a professional to guide them through this path, they're most likely to walk in the door and walk into a gym, and there's a number of trainers there, and they find the one who looks the most like they want to look, and
Hmm.
they go hire that guy. And it's you know, throughout my career, that has been an interesting and frustrating stumbling block, because trying to explain, trying to get over that initial motivator,
Hmm.
because, like, dude, that's genetics. That dude looks like that because that's his genes. He may or may not even train.
Hmm.
And I've known trainers throughout, like, I've never seen them work out. Like, I'm the guy that's like working out in the gym every day. I'm doing something, right?
Hmm.
And so if you come at the right time of day, you're going to see me training. Whereas I've got colleagues that I have never seen. I'm like, what are you doing, right?
Hmm.
What is that? Um, so just a tangent and an aside. But how long have you started early on working in a larger gym, but you've had your own place for a while, right?
Yeah. So we're at, yeah, I've been in multiple big gyms. Like small family YMCA is actually what I got started at. And then when I moved down south, I went into like big Globo gym type places. Um, yeah, we've been open here for, I think it's 8 years now. After the math, but so kind of operating small group training. And I think what you just hit on is an interesting piece, because now I've reached the point where we're almost always cycling like 2 or 3 interns through
Mm-hmm.
and like just the way that my system works, like they can't become coaches for me until they go through our 15-week internship.
That's a great
So
idea.
it lets me, yeah, it's good on my end because it lets me get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
And in the world of my internship, it's not like some places treat their interns like dogs and do all the grunt work and stuff like that. And like our guys, I say guys, we have only female interns right now, but our interns, they do some cleaning and stuff, but we don't actually like beat them up that badly as far as that stuff goes. But they have like weekly assignments they need to read. They need to send me like weekly written assignments and stuff like that. It's whole curriculum. But I find that the ones that do really well and then probably end up being coaches, assuming that life lines up and they want that, those ones are the ones who grasp the idea that your average member doesn't want to be a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones who are usually, and it's not always the same, but usually they're very physically talented. The ones that are physically talented and everything, movement comes easy to them, they have great genetics, they look great. They may love working out, they may not love working out, but they get tremendous results and they get results faster than the average person. Those people, and again, I'm making sweeping generalizations, but those people, they decide that they like being in gyms and they like working out because they're good at it, is a recurring theme, and they get to wear their pajamas all day. So they make the next logical leap, which says, I'm going to become a trainer, which I understand. But then what happens is then they go and they become a trainer and they don't realize that the person they're working with doesn't get good results quickly from training. They may not be physically talented. They don't like it for whatever reason. They have had bad experiences. They just would prefer to do other things, whatever. And so then they don't get, again, they don't get great results. So this trainer can't connect with them because what works for them doesn't work for this client. And so what they have a tendency to do is they have a tendency to turn around and say, oh, well, that means this person's lazy. They don't want it. They're not going to put in the work. They're not going to do the thing. And I'm like, well, why would you expect them to? They're hiring you to help them on that process.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you think that they're going to show up and already have a 5-day a week, 1 hour to 1 hour and a half fitness habit where they can go hard and that they're going to measure out all their meals and they're going to carry the Tupperware around. They're going to do like all the stereotypical shit. What makes you think they're going to do that? If they did that, they wouldn't hire you. They would be you.
Yeah.
Or they would be, if you go to any Globo gym, there's that hobbyist who's a very talented lifter, very talented bodybuilder that does all that stuff. They may not train anybody else, but they live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Those people don't hire trainers. They don't need them. I'm like, so the people that are hiring you for that help, how arrogant are you to assume that they should immediately do what you do, probably have to do it better than you do it because you're probably talented enough so where you don't have to do some of that stuff. You just tell them that you do. And then, yeah, and so the ones that don't grasp that real quickly, I find are the ones that struggle, and they especially struggle in our system because we treat people differently. But so that's kind of like, and I think that getting back to kind of what you said with it the first time is connecting up with the person when they come in. So maybe your group here, connecting up and figuring out how to go from the discussion of when they walk in the door, like, I just changed this. I don't like this. Mm-hmm. And be able to go from that discussion to, okay, well, what does that actually mean to you? And figuring out something that we can actually work on, that we actually have like a real clear goalpost what that is. And sometimes it's easy to do that. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people just need to like get in, get some momentum, you know, like, hey, you know what, let's get going for a few weeks. And so because you'll feel better. Let's do that. Then let's set a hard goal or a hard, like fixed goal. I guess a better choice of words than hard. Because it doesn't always need to be a hard goal, but like, and then figure that out. And then sometimes down the road, that goalpost moves. Like they made 3 months in, they're like, you know what? When I came in, I really wanted to be able to see my abs. But now I'm like 3 weeks in and I actually really like lifting heavy. And now I want to lift heavy. Mm-hmm. And it's not as important, you know, I want to be healthy, but it's not important for me to see my abs or, oh, you know, like, you know, I feel like I look good enough in a bathing suit now. And now I want to be able to go do this like adventure hike. You know, I live in Maine, so everybody does like adventure hikes, but you know, so like the goalpost may change. And as long as that discussion stays open, you can keep having that discussion. But a lot of times the first thing that I do with people, and again, I write programs for individuals. I do things for individuals. So it always is a little different, but is we have to get them to where they actually feel good, confident, and capable of themselves. We need to get that momentum going so they actually feel decent. Like baseline fitness, baseline lifestyle habits, baseline whatever. Baseline self-confidence is usually actually the big thing, and self-belief of actually that they're going to be able to make changes. Because so many people come into a place like mine or a place like yours and they've tried the Globo gyms, they've tried the whatever, and they've, you know, you go to their bookshelf and they've got 12 books on nutrition. They've got, you know, it's very rarely an information issue, but they've struggled with it somehow, some way for whatever reason. Well, they've built up 12 like examples of failure in their mind already. So I spend a lot of time the first few weeks with people just getting them so where they're not panicked coming into the gym, just getting to where they don't feel bad all the time, getting them to where like, okay, it was how we create a basic habit of whatever it is. Maybe it's drinking one of these a day. It honestly doesn't really matter what it is, but something where they can start to trust themselves and their brain starts to say like, oh, okay, when this guy says he's going to do something now, he actually does it, and get him to that point. And now after like 3-4 weeks of that or whatever it takes, but usually 3-4 weeks, then now we can actually set that big goal. We can say, okay, well now let's drop the 20 pounds, or let's, you know, fit into the high school jeans, or let's, you know, be able to beat your kids at a pull-up record, or whatever it is that you end up deciding to do. Doesn't matter. But until in so many places, so many people start with that goal, they don't clearly define it, and they start with this huge goal, and their brain doesn't believe that they're going to follow through with it because they failed so many times in the past. So they come in, their brain puts the brakes on because their brain isn't going to expend energy into failure. That's not how it works, because that's stupid. You'd die back in the day. So they always end up kind of half-assing it, or there's some sort of self-sabotage or missing excuse, or, you know, that happens. And as a result, after a few weeks, they peter out because they fulfilled the prophecy their brain was telling them. So if you start with that kind of big goal right off day one, a lot of times you're kind of dooming somebody to failure. And then next thing you know, now that's another failure notch in their belt. And now it'll be even harder to turn around the next time. So a lot of times I'll start with building people up a little bit to get them the momentum so that then we can set the big goal. Kind of went on a tangent there, but.
That's brilliant. That's really, I really liked what you said about, because I think you and I are a lot alike in that we take sort of an evolutionary approach to like where we're at right now. But I've never heard it put quite like that, that your brain is not willing to invest in failure. And that makes so much sense to me. You know?
Yeah. So if you think about it, like, you know, from, I always like to say saber through tiger times.
Yeah.
But so like,
me too. That's so funny.
Your brain has, you know, your brain's basic function is to keep you alive.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't give a shit what you look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your brain's basic function is to keep you alive right now.
Yeah. Not 10 years from now,
doesn't care.
Yeah. Today.
Couldn't care less.
Yes.
You know, we'll worry about 10 years from now down the road.
10 years from now.
Right. So your brain's going to keep you alive right now. So that basically means that, are you safe? And how much energy can we expend?
Are you fed?
Those are the things that your brain cares about.
Yeah.
Everything ends up being a net calorie equation for your brain, basically. So, okay, you've got this person, they walk in the door of your gym. If you're in my place, you've got, and I would do it, another facility I would do differently, just to sort of where my brain was at when I started, but also where it is right now. But you walk in, you've got loud music, very aggressive music. I'm the only place in Maine that plays some of the songs that we play. You've got a bright red wall. You've got a big bull logo with red eyes, stuff like that. So you got somebody that walks in, and when they walk in, if they're like a gym person, like if you walk into my place, which you have an open invite, of course. Awesome. If you walk into my place, you'd be like, fuck yeah, it's a gym. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you feel comfortable in gyms.
Yeah.
But if somebody who hasn't been in a while, hasn't been in a long time, hasn't been in ever, they walk in, I can see it. They're assaulted by all this stuff going on. So their brain is immediately questioning whether they're safe.
Yeah.
Okay. So my first job I have to do is knock down that. So the next place will have a nicer lobby that's a little more chill, so I can meet people before they walk into the door.
Yeah.
But so the first thing is to knock down that. But then the next thing the brain does when it decides on a plan, any sort of a change for the brain is hard. Good, bad, otherwise, doesn't matter. The brain says, okay, this is going to be, change means hard. Mm-hmm. Because even a shitty situation, if it's one that I know, I don't have to think as much. Mm-hmm. So I can save energy because I can put it on autopilot. So now, okay, change is going to be hard. Okay, immediately the brain says that's going to be expensive. So now you've got threat. The brain is scared for your safety. You have told it it's going to do something expensive, and you have developed a history of failing at similar tasks. So the brain is going to say, wait a minute. You want to do this thing. We don't know if it's going to work out. You're unclear, and a lot of people are unclear on what it actually looks like. So the brain doesn't really know what it's trying to do. So that uncertainty makes it feel less safe. You're going to end up creating a lack of safety. It's going to cost us a lot of calories. And I got to be honest, I don't really trust that you're going to make it work. So to limit conflict, I'm going to say, okay, well, yeah, we'll do this, because the human brain can put all that stuff in mind. So it'll say, okay, well, yeah, we're going to do this. So I'm going to sign up at this gym, and this guy's very persuasive, and I don't want to create more conflict by disagreeing with him. Mm-hmm. So it's easier for me just to sign on the dotted line and do this thing, and I'm excited, and I've got motivation. But when I get home, I've had a long day at work, it's been stressful, it's been whatever. Now I've gone on their diet for a week or two, and now I'm hungry and I'm feeling like uncomfortable, and the brain says, oh, well, if you're feeling uncomfortable, let's have a cookie. Let's do something that makes you feel comfortable. Before you know it, that happens, and before you know it, the brain has reasserted its old patterns because it felt good with those. You missed a day or two at the gym because of a legitimate circumstance, kid gets sick, whatever, it doesn't matter. Your brain jumps on that opportunity, and lo and behold, because it doesn't believe you're going to do it in the first place, you only put in half effort, and thus it all turns out to be true. And now the brain's right, which it loves.
Yeah.
It loves being right because it doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about being right. So now, guess what? You fulfilled your own prophecy, and oh, those people didn't get me where I needed to go.
Yeah.
They don't know anything. I'm going to go try this, 42-day cleanse or whatever the fuck the latest marketing is that's designed to attract my marketing. And I'm not going to finish that either. And blah, 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 because that's not going to work because of the same situation. So that's why I spend so much time with people early on trying to build them up and get them to where that brain actually feels like, you know what? This guy actually, he's starting to follow through a little bit. I might be willing to open the purse strings a little bit and actually expend some energy because this seems to be working out. I'm getting a positive return when it does it. And so now all of a sudden you've got somebody that you've knocked down their threat and they actually start to see some wins. They get some momentum. The brain starts to believe them a little bit. And lo and behold, they stop making all the excuses. They stop with all the self-sabotaging. Or if they do, they can hop right back on the train because the brain starts to believe in it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So if they have a down day, they do, because everybody does. But they can go, oh, okay, well, shit. That other thing was working for me before too, so I can get back to that. So it stops at 1 day or stops at 2 days versus like just tailing off forever. Mm-hmm. So that's why I don't necessarily sometimes start people out with like the big goal and have this like super detailed like goal setting session with SMART goals and like all the stuff that are all fine. But a lot of times I don't even stress about that at first. Like I like to know where people are going because that's why are you standing in front of me talking? Like, yes, let's get a vague idea. But other than that, like let's focus on making sure that you feel as good and healthy and fit as possible in general. And we've now prepared you to do something amazing versus like taking your already super stressed, uncomfortable, scared self and dumping a huge goal in your lap that your brain goes, well. So
that's one of the things that I love about your work, and really got me thinking about and paying attention to. You mentioned in one of your social media posts over the last 2 months or so, looking at, so that you'll have these clients come in and they'll say, I want to set this lofty goal. I want to lose X amount of pounds in so many days for such and such event or whatever. And so they even have what would technically be a SMART goal. Like they have a specific idea of what they want to achieve. They have a timeline for doing it in. They're coming to you for the actionable steps to get to that process. And what you talked about was the actual having the conversation of like, is that even reasonable for you? Mm-hmm. Like I understand that you want to do these things, and I think that's wonderful. I think that's great. But what does the rest of your lifestyle look like? Mm-hmm. Are you working third shift? Are you operating off of 5 hours of sleep that you squeeze in between 10 and 2? And then trying to get your kids to school and all the other stuff that you're doing, is your stress load so high that like even adding, one more thing to it is going to just backslide you even worse. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was so valuable, because I don't think enough of us, consider or even take the trouble to understand what all the other hours of the week look like for our clients versus the ones that, like if you've only early on in my career, foolishly pursuing, the client who would come in and was specifically aiming for body recomposition and fat loss, and realizing that how limited my effect was. I have you for 3 hours a week at tops, So if I've got you for three, how am I going to compete with all those other hours?
Yeah, like I can kick the shit out of you in 3 hours.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? Like we can work really hard. Like you can leave in a puddle of sweat and gasping and thinking that you're gonna, die, and you're already seeing whatever deity that you jump on. You know what I mean? Like we can kick the shit out of you in 3 hours. That's fine. We can burn whatever 1,200 to 3,000 calories in those 3 hours. Like, okay, cool. Like 3,000 calories over the course of a week time is like misplacing a few snacks every day. Like, let alone all the other stuff that comes into it. Like, so, and I find that so many people, they've got so much going on in their life. Because the people that hire me generally tend to be fairly, I think part of it's my personality, part of it's the marketing, but they tend to be fairly driven. Like, they're busy people. Like I have almost no like, oh yeah, I got time to do whatever. Like I just don't have those type of clients. When I was in Charleston, South Carolina, there were a few more of those types of clients. But up here, everybody, is pretty driven, pretty focused. They've got kids, they've got families, they've got whatever. And so it's very much like, okay, well, let's figure out what it is that you actually have going on. And is it wise for us to add another substantial stress to your plate? Like, do you have the room for that? Or do we need to figure out how to adjust other stressors in your life to accommodate for that? Like if you're bound and determined to work out here with me 3 days a week, that's fine. Assuming you're fit, that's great. But now let's figure out where that fits in the puzzle. And just adding more is, for many people, not going to be a viable option if they've already got a lot going on in their life.
Yes.
Like they've already got enough more. So now it's like, okay, well, what do we end up doing to end up either increasing the stress bucket that they can have, or increase the size of the drain to fill it out, or whatever we got to do, or to accommodate for all of that, because otherwise you're just piling more load on dysfunction, so to speak.
Right. Exactly. Do you find that to be a hard sell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not doing enough. I'm not working hard enough. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, and people that it's, quite frankly, it's sort of like ends up being a little bit of a winnowing process. I find that there are people that just they refuse to acknowledge that. And quite frankly, that means that I'm not good enough at communicating to them. So I say they refuse to acknowledge it, but it's really just that I'm not communicating it well enough.
It's such a hard sell, man. It really is.
Yeah. But the people that make it here, or that make it through my programs that do well with it, which is most people, don't get me wrong, but like they tend to get that long view and they tend to get that understanding. And we spend a lot of time kind of like streamlining and refining the rest of their life, because like the vast majority of us, myself included, do a lot of inefficient things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like there's a lot of stresses that could be avoided if we did things not even harder, but just a little differently. So what I find with many people is that we can kind of come up with some easy wins to smooth out a lot of aspects of their life, because things have just kind of evolved to the way they are. You know what I mean? You didn't consciously plan to do them that way. And that frees up the energy to do some training and do some hard work. And then ultimately from there, eventually, maybe the training becomes one of the anchor points. But like at first, you got to figure out, okay, where's the room? And I've had people that really didn't have the room. Like they had, the only people that really I find that didn't have the room for much in the way of training were people that would have like a situation of like a sick elderly relative or something like that. Some all-consuming thing.
Yeah.
Like if it's a matter of your job may be busy and stressful. And so we may not end up going like, you may not come in and doing high CNS work all the time. Don't get me wrong, but we can kind of still do some stuff. But I find occasionally some people that are just so emotionally drained that I'm like, look, man, you need to like take some walks.
Yeah.
You need to carve out some time to take some walks. Eat some good food, take some walks, get your naps in when you can. It is what it is. And make it through these next 3 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want me to build you a little mobility thing to do at the house? You know what I mean? Like, cool, sneak it in there. But I find people that are in that situation, and sometimes they balk at me at first, but after a while they realize that, okay, yeah, I just got to get through this. But
yeah, I think the industry does us both as trainers and who are trying to perpetuate a message like that, and our clients who so desperately need to hear that message, such a disservice, because it's all, as entertaining as guys like CT Fletcher are. It's like, dude, you have no idea how much damage that does if all you hear is, the reason that you're fat is because you're lazy. The reason that you're out of shape is because you don't do enough. Or who's that Navy SEAL who's like the ultra marathoner dude who got so popular last year? You know who I'm talking about?
Goggins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, I have not read his book, and it's on my list. I plan on getting to it, but just from what I've seen peripherally of his press and people talking about him, like, dude's a dysfunctional dude, right? I mean, he just, he has developed a compensating pattern that fits, that does not necessarily, and it works for him, but it does not necessarily make him the model of like, he's not your roadmap, right? Most of us would break and shatter under under that level of stress and load, and so pushing yourself to do more and go harder is not always the answer. And beating yourself up because your body or your mind is telling you that no, we're not doing this, right, is not helpful, right? So
the thing with those, and I mean, like you say, like, I'm entertained by those. I like those guys just as much as everybody else. You know what I mean? Every once in a while is a good little motivation boost. It's cool.
Sure.
But the thing is the people that, what you need to understand, I've spent enough time, as I think you have, in like kind of the internet marketing space, right? And I see it a lot in that. So you meet these guys, you go to a conference, you go to a seminar, and you kind of have this vision of what one of these guys is like, one of these Instagram famous guys or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not even speaking about anybody in particular, because I could rattle off half a dozen names that are like this. But you get this vision of what they're like, and then you look at what their life actually is, and they're stopping conversations midway through to be like, oh, hey, can we go live with this? Oh, hey, can we, like, they actually, like, because they're so desperate to create content, because they've got to feed that content machine.
Yes. Oh, it's a monster.
They're so desperate to it that they either they're misrepresenting, because they sometimes don't do the things they say they do, which whatever.
Yeah.
Or they've got to, they spend all their time thinking about what they're going to do to promote this content or do this thing or something like that, that they actually can't have like a real conversation. And it's annoying.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, you want to emulate, I could say this to somebody, you want to emulate this person, you want to be like this person, but you don't. You want to be like what the image of them you've created in your mind is.
Or that unrealistic perception that they have generated as their marketing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got Goggins, and I don't know the guy from Adam. I have watched some of his stuff. I haven't read his book yet. He speaks, there's a few interviews I have seen with him. He speaks pretty openly about the various dysfunctions he has, both physical, but also his psyche dysfunctions.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, he promotes this message and it's good. Fine, like, do you. But my understanding is that he doesn't have kids, or he doesn't have a kid that he lives with him. This is what he does for a living.
Yeah.
He has a girlfriend that he gets out of bed to drive next to him and film the camera. He's been through multiple wives and girlfriends, so that tells you how that works out. He's, physically miserable most of the time. Okay. He has made that his life to overcome that. And that's awesome. Do you, dude. That's cool. But now we've got a 30-year-old dad of a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Right.
That if I ask him, I'm like, okay, well, what do you actually want to do? Like, what is your perfect life like? And he's like, well, I want to be able to coach my kids' t-ball team, and I want to not be like the dad that has to stand on the sidelines at the barbecue. I want to be able to be the one that's out playing with my kids, blah, blah, blah. And the wife and I go to vacation to Cancun every year, and I want to be able to be like one of the better looking guys at the beach. Okay, that's your priority, which is all good things. And I want to be able to not get fired from my job and keep moving my way up the food chain at the bank where I work. Pick your stereotypical stuff.
Right.
But okay, so those are your priorities. Cool. So the question is, do you need to emulate what Goggins is doing?
Nope.
Or will all of those things that you are now trying to emulate take you actually further away from the things you just described to me?
Yep.
Okay. Now, could you learn some good things from him once in a while? Absolutely.
Sure.
Is it every once in a while, do you need to have that conversation? He talks about he has conversations with his shoes where he basically stares and yells at his shoes for half an hour before he goes on a run because he hates doing it. And he has to convince himself to go out for a run. Cool.
What is the deal with that? Just as a quick aside, I've heard Jack LaLanne talk about how much he hated exercise, but he made himself do it anyway. I've heard Muhammad Ali claim that he hated every minute of training, but that he knew that this was the price to pay in order to be the greatest. I love training. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really do. Chip and I have had this conversation before where Chip competes way more than I do. In fact, I don't like competing at all. If I never did another competition, I would be perfectly happy with that. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while I get conned into it because so-and-so wants me to do it or whatever. If my jiu-jitsu professor was like, hey, Dave, I want you to enter this competition, I would do that out of respect to him and the school. But if he doesn't care, I'm good. You guys go have fun. But I love the training. And so I don't understand, that mentality where it's such a misery, right? It's like, if you don't love it, then don't do it, Yep. So yelling at your shoes.
Yeah. And, so and in order for him to, and again, I don't know the guy, so I'm projecting, but, or conjecturing or whatever the term would be. But in order for him to achieve his ultimate goal of being David Goggins, as he is right now, which is clearly what he's achieving. Whether he identifies that as his goal or not is irrelevant because he's clearly achieving his current goal because that's what he's achieving. He needs to do things that he hates to do. Okay. Interesting. For Muhammad Ali, he wanted to be the greatest boxer of all time. And you could make your discussions on whether he achieved that or not. At his time, certainly.
Yeah.
The boxing purists always get these arguments, but whatever. Okay. He knew that in order to achieve that, he needed to do the training that he did. So he was willing to make that exchange. And I think that there may be some aspect of everything that we all need to make trade-offs because resources are always limited. People that are big into like the woo-woo law of attraction stuff like that always get pissed when I say that. But at any given moment, your resources are limited. You have so much energy, so much time, so much money, so much whatever. You may grow more of that in the future.
But in this
You can
place and
change
this
it,
time,
but at this very second, I've only got so much I can commit to anything.
right.
So you got to weigh in on those things, on whether or not the trade-off is worth doing the things that are miserable to you. And so for Muhammad Ali or for Goggins or whatever, they've made the decision that that misery is worth the exchange. And both of them kind of turned it into part of their shtick. Okay. So for the average guy that we were talking about, the 30-year-old with the 2 kids and stuff like that, he's got to figure out where his threshold of uncomfortableness is to get to the thing he actually wants to do. And he has to figure out what his priority of thing he wants to do on, and how much uncomfortable shit he actually needs to accomplish or go through to get that. And I don't think, given that what our particular expertise is, to achieve what I described for that particular hypothetical gentleman, we can make it so he doesn't have to physically doesn't have to go through a whole bunch of hard shit. Like maybe there might be some exercise he doesn't particularly love, like some sort of a corrective or something. Okay. But like in general, we don't need him to be David Goggins. We don't need him to train like Muhammad Ali. We don't have to have it that defined. If he hates back squats, probably doesn't need to back squat to achieve those goals.
Yeah.
You know, if he hates whatever, pick your whatever, hates running, unless he's chasing his kids or playing with his kids, like that guy's probably never going to go for a run in his life.
Yeah.
But that's something that needs to be kind of thought through a little bit, because it's very easy to get pulled into the persuasive trap's a bad choice of words, but it seems drastic, but get pulled into that persuasive maelstrom from these influential figures. They're going to kind of always be, you know, Goggins runs, I should run. Jocko gets up at 4 and does trains and kicks the shit out of himself. I should get up at 4 and kick the shit out of myself. Well, I don't know, maybe. Like, what Jocko's really talking about is discipline. His version of that happens to be getting up at 4 and posting a picture of his watch every day.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily telling you that you have to get up at 4 to train, or whatever time it is, 4:30 or whatever it is. He's not telling you to do that. It's something that he's found useful, so he's sharing that from his experience. It is your responsibility, and this is, I think this is part of the problem with the influencer culture, is that people take them at face value, and they adopt whatever habits that this influencer has developed, and assuming that the influencer in question is actually doing them. We could get into that whole dishonesty rabbit hole, but assuming that they're actually doing them, it works for them, and they are freely sharing what works for them, and that's totally fine. That's interesting. There may be something to be gleaned from that. But what's the higher level effect? In Jocko's case, to use him as an example, it's the discipline of getting up and training every day and knowing that it's done. He's taking care of his body right off the bat before everybody else in the house got up, blah, blah, blah. For him, that's an important part of his discipline. For you, that may not be it. For you, it may be your midday walk at lunch with your best friend.
Yeah.
That may be your discipline, daily discipline. It may be an after dinner walk. Who knows? It may be getting up at 4:30 and kicking the shit out of yourself. It may be.
Yep.
But doing it just because Jocko's doing it, and you like his personality, or starting to run ultras just because Goggins did it because it was the hardest thing for him to do, and it was the closest way he could bring himself to death that he could find. Okay, well, if that vibes with you, then fucking do it. But if it doesn't, just take what he's done. He's challenging himself with something hard every day. I think we could all stand to challenge ourselves with something hard every day.
True
So
that.
take the big lesson and then apply that. Don't take the minutia. So that's my take on the tendency is, though, to follow these influencers and then want to do everything that they're doing the way that they're doing.
Yeah.
And like I guess CT Fletcher, super entertaining, super motivational,
He's
fired up.
hilarious.
I see a lot of kids get broken trying to do the things he's doing.
Exactly.
When what he really, again, I'm putting words in his mouth, I guess, because I don't know him, but what he really wants is for people just to be fired up and excited and go hard.
Right.
That's what he wants.
Push yourself.
Yeah. He doesn't necessarily want you to deadlift like he does or like all the stuff that he does.
Yeah, I think
he even probably has had a few videos saying that, but
yeah, I honestly have not actually viewed any of his content in probably a couple of years now.
Probably the same. Last time he was on Rogan, I think it's the last time
But I think that's where you shine, is that you have a very conceptual approach and a very principled approach to how you reach your clients, how you run your business, how you live your life. And so having those concepts and principles in place allows you to be much more flexible with the details. And so that you can actually, meet your clients where they are and help create success there. So that's cool. I really applaud and appreciate that. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I would probably sell more programs and make more money if I was willing to be the this is the way it has to be done guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's frustrating from a business perspective. But
totally. Yes.
I'd probably be much more successful. But I can't, integrity-wise, I can't do that because the answer is almost always, it depends. Yeah. Should I do this or that? I don't know, it depends. Let's figure it out. And there may be an answer.
Maybe.
But let's figure it out versus just, I'm going to throw you my pet solution that I came up with and there you go. And I think that from a perspective of working with people, if you can get people to the point where they can understand and think for themselves and think their way through some of this stuff, they don't need to become an expert like you or I in our chosen fields. They're experts in whatever it is that they do. They're teachers, they're accountants, they're lawyers, they're whatever. They can be an expert in that. They can be an expert parent, like those things. They don't need to be an expert leadership coach or expert performance coach or strength coach. But they should get to the point where they can look at it critically and have some understanding of their body and their mind and say, okay, what am I really trying to get done here? Now that I know that now that I've figured out what I'm really trying to get done, let's figure out the handful of steps to get there. Oh, I don't understand this step. I know it needs to happen, but I don't understand it. Now they can go find somebody that does. Mm-hmm. Now they have something to get an understanding on versus getting this program off the shelf that hopes works for them. They hope works for them.
Yeah.
I like to use the map analogy of let's say you want to get to New York. Well, cool. Okay. I can sell you a map to New York. But if that map has you starting in Maine and I send it to you and you look at it, it's a perfectly good map. Yeah. Absolutely viable map. It absolutely does what it says it's going to do. But it is not going to get you to New York. I don't know where it's going to take you, but it's not going to get you there. So that's the problem with a lot of the over-the-shelf solutions like that, or off-the-shelf solutions like that. And they have their place. But if you don't look at them that way, if you bought said map and it was of the Eastern U.S. and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's marked up here as the starting point in Maine, but that's not actually where I am. I got to figure out, I got to go down here. And you had that thought. You could probably still use that map and it's perfectly fine. But if you just took it at face value and trudge your way down the street, you're screwed. And that's what people do is they take these programs at face value and they just trudge their way down the street, but they were written for somebody else, starting somewhere else. And it just doesn't work. It's not even because the program is bad. It's not like the guy that wrote it was being dishonest.
No.
But it's not the viable option for them.
Plus, I think it's a difficult challenge to actually know where you're at.
Right.
That's, I know even in my own lifting career, and actually my current lifting is greatly informed by not fully knowing where I was when I was younger. And so, like I'm doing such a thorough deep dive into front squat right now because I did it wrong for so long. Even to the point of like, I spent a couple of years pursuing Olympic weightlifting and got frustrated with it because, for my size, I should have been lifting a whole lot heavier. And that's because I didn't have a rack position. Like I just literally could not get into a good front rack. And so all I was doing was just beating the crap out of my shoulders until, eventually
something breaks.
Yeah. Luckily for me, it was actually my spirit broke first.
Fair enough.
I was like, you know what? I just suck at this. My levers are wrong. I can't do this. And so I kind of walked away from that and allowed my ADD to draw me in another direction. But there are specific reasons right now where I'm really, and they're actually not even aligned with Olympic weightlifting, but really wanting to dial in and fix that rack position and to front squat, right? It's something that I've got, and I'm having to take it so far back. Like I posted something the other day, like I'm working on my front squat by not front squatting right now because I'm honestly trying to get external rotation in the shoulder just so that I can get into that rack position. And like, if I can't get a full rack, then why would I be squatting any weight at all, not being able to get into that position? Right. And it's taken me until 50, right? It's taken me until almost 50 and a fitness pro for 15 years to get into that place where I'm willing to set aside any ego that I've got in order to do this right. So, imagine how hard that is for, some guy walking in off the street who did play football in high school or, and had, I don't know what it's like in Maine, but strength and conditioning for high school athletes in Alabama, it's getting better, but historically has been really, really bad. And so when I get these adults that come, especially adult guys, they're like, oh, I played football in high school. I know how to work out. And then, show me a squat. And they're like, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. And historically it's bad here. It is slowly improving. But that's the type of guy I deal with all the time because they didn't do it well when they were in high school. And now they're 20 years older. And they've been sitting on the couch, they've been working, they've been doing whatever they've been doing. Like life has accumulated. You know what I mean? It's not like they've been practicing daily mobility and et cetera for the past 20 years. If they have been, they don't contact me. So anyway, so now they come in and they attempt to do what they think they remember from before. Yeah. Which wasn't very good in the first place. And so now you've got this like terrible game of telephone with a much less functional body. Right. And in that situation, they're also they wouldn't usually say it, but they're super amped up and nervous. So they're like, getting back to what we were talking about before, their brain is in threat because they've got to try to prove to the trainer they know what they're doing for whatever reason. I totally get that conversation, but they have to try to prove they know what they're doing. So now they're super amped up. So their body shuts their mobility down even more because it wants to protect them from injury. So if they're amped like that, it's not going to let them free flow and move. So now they get even worse. So now it looks even more like shit. And they know it looks like shit because they're not stupid. So now they get embarrassed about it. So then it looks more like shit because they're getting more nervous. And
Even
then
more
this
of a
cycle
threat.
repeats.
Yeah.
And we got to go, oh, let's fix this. And we got to do it in a way that doesn't make them feel even more pissed off and embarrassed.
Or to add shame on top of
Yeah.
like, you know, all of that. Yeah. So I'm struck by how thoroughly informed your approach is shaped by human psychology and understanding, you know, like that concept of being under threat and how that interferes with, you know, even just your ability to listen, or to sort of slow down. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really focusing in my work, not necessarily the psychological aspect of it, but actually trying to slow my clients down.
Yep.
Right. So that they're such into this amped up place of trying to, you know, like somehow the brain feels like if I do it faster, I'll get through it quicker and it will be better, which is never the case.
Well, it ends up being objective based. Like you tell them, I mean, I write programs this way too, but you tell them, okay, we're going to do 3 sets of 12. Okay. What you and I are envisioning when we do that is we're saying, okay, well, it's probably going to take them between 2 and 4 seconds to do each rep. That's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 seconds in that set. That's going to be this time under tension. You know, after 25 seconds or so, they're going to end up being pretty well through most of the type 2 fibers moving into type 1. They're going to be, you know, like that's in our head. That's what we're doing. They see 3 sets of 12.
Yes.
So their mind says,
I must do 3
if
sets
I
of
do
12.
3 sets of 12, I check the box, I get my win for the day.
Yes.
What we're looking for is we're looking for a qualitative response. And when we envision it, when we write it, we write it in our mind as a qualitative response. But what they interpret that is, and there's no reason why they wouldn't, because they don't know anything else.
Yep.
So they interpret it as a quantitative objective, whereas we were looking for quality.
Yep. Yeah.
And we set them up for failure on that. I totally still write programs that way, so I'm throwing a rock at myself. We set them up for failure on that because of that.
I find myself trying more and more to get away from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they will, like I'm like, you know, so I'm more like setting programming in terms of like we're gonna do 5 sets.
Yeah.
We're gonna do 5 sets of this particular. Well, how many reps? I'm like, I don't know, 5 to 10, whatever feels right. You know, depends on how heavy a weight are you going with today. And this is more in terms of like my small groups, which I'm actually getting more and more away from. Like this would be a whole nother conversation to discuss how COVID has affected your business over the last year. And my own personal model is going under a substantial revision right now. But yeah, so it's entirely dependent upon, you know, where you are. Like if I program a plank rather than setting a time limit for the plank, I'm like, I want you to go until you start to shake. Once you start that shake, the plank is over. It's good. You know, and so that could be 10 seconds. That could be a minute. It doesn't matter to me. I don't really care. But getting you to that place where your body's like, whoa, all right. That's perfect. That's where I want you.
Yeah.
And if I can then engender that in any other, you know, training, right? So if we're doing goblet squats, right? If I get you to that edge of like, okay, this is starting to get hard, bam, perfect. You know, and that could be 5 reps, that could be 10 reps, that could be 20 reps. It all depends on, you know, where you are today, which bell you chose, you know, where you're at. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's something that we play with, but I got to be honest, like I don't, when I work with somebody, we break down, we have a whole system of how we do it, but we break down like working into individual aspects of it. We'll work on that aspect of it. When I'm prescribing in the group sessions and stuff like that, it's a little more of like, okay, here's what we're going to hit. and then
Well, I
then
think
it gives us our median point, and then we adjust every person up or down depending on the day.
yeah,
So like we still individualize everything for every person, but it gives us our framework. Like, okay, 12 reps, Isaac's looking for about 30 to 40 seconds worth of work on this exercise. My coaches know that, I know that, and then like, oh, okay, hey, look, that looked like shit after 30 seconds. We need to drop that down.
mm-hmm.
We need to spend more time working on this. My coaches all know they can go off script as far as like, if somebody hits 10 reps or somebody hits 12 reps or somebody hits 14 reps, I don't really care. It's the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. But it at least gives us like a framework to work from, to adjust from. Kind
That's
of a
awesome.
aim small to miss small type thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I bet you produce some awesome coaches.
I try.
Yeah.
The goal is for them to be, despite what my ego says, the goal is for them to be better than I am.
Nice.
So,
yeah,
which I'm at times I struggle with because I have an ego like everybody else.
of course,
but
absolutely. I think, yeah, I could see that in myself as well. I think about a year ago, almost a year ago, I had this young strongman come in from Tampa, and he's been training at my gym for about a year now. And it's the first time I wasn't the biggest guy in the gym.
Yeah.
And I love him. He's great. He's a wonderful kid. I love having him in there. He brings a great energy to the gym. And it actually was very freeing for me. It's just like, there's like no way, I'm twice his age. I'm twice his age, and he's got, almost 100 pounds on me. He's huge. He's an ox. He's, so it freed me from having to be that guy. Like, you know what? Doesn't matter. Nobody cares except me.
Right.
And if I can let that go, then it frees me up to do the stuff that I really need to be doing.
So absolutely. Yeah. I've made that similar evolution as well with a couple coaches and some clients and stuff like that. And it's like I said, the ego is of course there, but it's still pretty good. Like, it makes it so that it's like, you know what, I can just coach and be the guy that coaches.
Nice.
I don't need to turn it into some sort of a competition that I'm not trying to be in.
Yeah.
Like,
it's actually counterproductive to everything
right.
else.
Like I don't need to, it's like trying to win the race that I didn't actually want to sign up for. Like,
right. Yeah. Dude, we're well past an hour now.
Yep.
I don't know what your day looks like, but I could totally go on for easily another hour. There's so many other questions I've got for you, so we're going to have to do this again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
But before we sign off, I'd really like for you to speak to this leadership program that you've been building. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so basically, I call it the whole big program is going to be Spiral of Leaders is kind of the framework I call it. But I specifically have like a shorter term program I call it Driven by Purpose, where about 16 weeks and work with people on all of these bases, right? So primarily the people I tend to find are I call former athletes or former military who, and it's not inherently that, but they just seem to get it. People who they retire, they hang up the cleats, they move on to that next phase of life where they've got the job, they've got the kids, they've got the stuff like that. And life is pretty good, but they just feel like there was something more. And like the athletes get it, the military guys get it. I say guys, but military people get it because that provided them with a purpose and a reason. The sport, the military, like, and then they suddenly end up with their out and doing their job, and like they love their family, they love their job, stuff like that is good, or they maybe hate their job, depends on the person, but it doesn't have that like purpose. They know there's something more in them. And so what I do is I work with those people to get them both physically, nutritionally in shape so they're actually feeling their best again, but then work on them on developing their purpose and developing their leadership and developing them so they can step into being like the leader that they actually know that they can be, versus just trudging through their day and where it feels like every day is Groundhog Day and stuff like that. Um, Instead, let's focus on making it so that you are the leader and the focal point. You're in the driver's seat. You're actually driving your life, whether it's at work. We work on leadership skills for the job, but also the family, or even just for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, it's so easy in our society now, which is quite frankly phenomenal from an evolutionary perspective. It's so easy in our society that you can basically just coast through your day and you'll be all right. You know, like you'll be fed, you'll have shelter, you'll have all this other stuff. You'll have entertainment, you can coast through your day and not develop any meaningful connections and not do anything else. Again, from an evolutionary perspective, that is phenomenal. It is amazing that our society has reached that point. However, that is not how we're wired.
Yeah.
Humans are wired to do amazing, awesome things, to expand, to grow, to develop, which is how that society came to be. And it's very easy to get caught up in that and get lost in that shuffle and just feel like, what's the point? Like, why do I do this every day? And eventually it's only so long you do that before you just reach, not even clinical. I'm certainly not qualified to discuss clinical depression, but you just reach that low level depression of that ennui or whatever you want to call it, where you're just like, blah, all right, trudging through another day. Oh, got a barbecue on the weekend. Oh, got to go to the soccer game on the weekend and listen to a bunch of fat dads talk about, how awesome they used to be. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So the people I work with recognize that this is a thing, and then we've got to figure out how to break the rust off and get them back into, being that athletic, being that strong, driven person that they always were. And kind of just waking that back up and figuring out they got to find a new thing to actually have a purpose about. So we start with the physical. A lot of times we start with the nutritional, we start with the lifestyle, to like we talked about earlier in this call, to get them to where they're feeling that vibe. They're actually feeling confident in themselves again and feeling like they can get in control. And then we nail down what it is they're actually trying to do. Because a lot of times you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then once anybody like that, once they have a purpose, they have confidence, they have means, they have a purpose, it's downhill from there. They'll go after it because that's what made them successful in the first place.
That's super cool.
It's basically just aligning them and then taking the brakes off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Well, I wish you tremendous success with that. I have no doubt.
It's been a lot of fun with the guys I've been working with so far. It's been a lot of fun.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I can't wait. I'd like to keep hearing about it. I'll be looking for your posts about it, and keep up the posts that you've been putting out, because I've really been enjoying them.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
You produce great content. It's real. It's realistic, and it doesn't fall into that hyperbolic hole that you feel like almost compelled to.
It's hard to
stand out.
It's hard to not do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, just because, like you say, it's almost like a compulsion. This is what you see so much from it in our industry.
Yeah.
And even though I don't like it, and I know you don't like it, but we just see it so much, we feel like it's almost like we're obligated to do it.
Yeah. If we want anybody to listen to us, and we do, right? I mean, we do, because we genuinely feel like we've got something that is of value. Mm-hmm. And so how do I grab your attention? I have actively avoided for so long posting images of me working out. Like me doing exercises, because it was never about me. It was never about my training. Right. And quite frankly, I don't think I'm that remarkable. So who wants to watch this anyway? But it started on a lark of putting out a club video on Instagram a couple weeks ago. And
I
suddenly
saw that actually.
that was my most popular post in a
Yeah.
while. And I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Really?
Hmm.
You're going to make me do this just so that I can get, some attention, not because I'm a whore for attention. I mean, I am. I mean,
Hmm.
you have to be a little bit to be in this sort of
Oh,
business. Like,
sure. Yeah.
there's part of that, but there's also like, I want you to, I want the deep thoughts with the Alabama Sasquatch message to
Mm.
get out there. And I
Right.
need, so if I swing some clubs around and that drags your attention enough that you're willing to look at other things that I've got out there, maybe you'll stumble across one of those. And maybe something that I say there will resonate in the way that I want it to resonate.
Well, ultimately, I look at it, and I've felt all of the things you just described, 100%, still do. But ultimately, I look at it as like we spoke about earlier. With many new clients will come in, and they have this. They want this to change, or they want a six pack, or they want a whatever it is, and that's all perfectly fine. And that's what gets them in the door. And after a few weeks or a few months, they start to really appreciate the nuances. They start to really learn. They start to really develop. And so I think that, and I used to be really upset about that. And sometimes I still get annoyed. Let's be real. But until I finally realized that, like, okay, look, if I only put out really like the, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call something I put out deep or whatever, but the deep stuff, the stuff that like, I think that's super important for everybody to know. Most people are not at the place where they want to receive that yet.
Yeah.
So it behooves me, and this is a conversation I'm having myself, it behooves me to put out not necessarily like the really hyperbolic, like junk, don't get me wrong, but like stuff that meets people a little more where they're at.
Yeah.
And then over time, the ones that want to learn that nuance, they'll self-select. And so I realize I need to start putting out a little more of like general fitness content that I had avoided for a long time. But that's how people actually meet me. They actually meet me because they come in looking for a six pack, or they come in looking for they feel out of shape. They want to feel in shape again. They want to feel strong again. Or they had some sort of a situation where they tried to move a dresser and it kicked their ass. And you know what I mean? Or they were playing basketball with their kids and it sucked. And so like meeting them there when I want them to eventually develop a care and a love for their body and understanding how their mind and their body connects. Okay, that's cool. But let's start with meeting them at, this is how you can play basketball with your kids and not feel hurt the next day. So I've kind of come a little bit more full circle on that.
Cool.
I think that the issue is that so many coaches in the industry stop at that.
Mm-hmm.
And they only want to keep selling the next program to the people versus teaching people how to understand their body. So they don't need a new program every time they turn around.
Yeah.
Which is, I'd much rather do that. I feel much more in line integrity wise with that.
Yeah. The ultimate goal is to work yourself out of a job, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that I'm perfectly comfortable with.
Yeah. Same here.
So
that's awesome. All right. So if any of my folks are interested or moved by our conversation and want to follow you on the various social medias, where do they find you?
So Facebook, I went to UMaine, which was one of the first schools to get Facebook after I left Harvard. So like I have like the OG, it's facebook.com/Isaac.Wilkins.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then Instagram, it's Isaac_Wilkins.
Okay, cool. Awesome, dude.
Those are the two big ones.
Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I really enjoyed
absolutely.
this conversation.
Thanks for having me on.
And I'm looking forward to continued conversations in the future for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, guys, this was Isaac Wilkins, and I'm going to make this a monthly thing. So be on the lookout next month for my next interview. And as always, if you guys have suggestions, people you want me to talk to, people you want to hear from, let me know. All right. Talk to you guys. Be good. Have a great day.